In a world filled with hidden traditions and cultural secrets, there exists a place where customs and values collide in the most unexpected ways. In Tibet, ancient beliefs and modern desires intertwine, creating a practice that shocks, intrigues, and stirs conversation. What you're about to discover may sound almost unreal, but this is not fiction. In this remote country, young women partake in a tradition unlike anything you might expect. These young virgins sleep with foreign tourists, not as an act of rebellion or survival, but for a reason deeply rooted in their culture. A practice viewed as bringing good fortune. It's a tradition that's both revered and criticized, celebrated and condemned, all at once. But why does it happen? What drives these women? And why do tourists willingly take part? The story behind this practice is far more complex than it appears on the surface. And what we find here reveals more about human nature, societal norms, and cultural values than we could ever imagine. Far from the neon lights of sprawling cities and the hum of modern life lies a land steeped in time-honored traditions. It's a place where the old ways still shape everyday life, where spirituality and mysticism touch every corner of society. Here, tucked away from prying eyes, the connection between people and the forces they believe govern their lives is sacred. In the quiet villages that dot the landscape, this particular tradition takes place. It's a land seemingly untouched by the march of time, where rituals passed down through generations continue to thrive. And yet, even in this place, the influence of the outside world has crept in. Tourists from around the globe flock here, some to witness the beauty of the land, and others, lured by the mystery of a tradition they've only heard whispers about. This is a place where ancient customs still hold sway, where the line between the spiritual and the material is blurred, and where, for some, sleeping with a tourist can bring blessings for the future. You might be wondering, how can something like this exist in today's world? To understand, we have to look deeper into the culture. This practice, where young women sleep with foreign visitors, isn't seen as something scandalous or illicit within the community. In fact, it's rooted in the belief that engaging in this act brings prosperity, good fortune, and blessings for the family. For many, it's not just an exchange, it's a ritual of renewal, a way to align with the forces that govern their fate. But to the outside world, it appears controversial, perhaps even exploitative. Yet here it's woven into the very fabric of societal expectations. The young women are seen as important contributors to their family's well-being, offering themselves as part of a larger tradition meant to bring prosperity. But how does one reconcile the idea of using something so intimate as a transaction for blessings? For the local people, it's simply a matter of faith, a deeply held belief that this is how the world works. And it's not about losing something. Rather, it's about gaining favor from higher powers. But what do the young women themselves think? Are they willing participants, or is there pressure to conform to these old ways? Tourism in many ways drives this practice. Visitors from around the world come here for a variety of reasons. But this tradition has become something of a draw for the curious and the adventurous. For the local community, tourism brings money, opportunities, and access to the modern world. But with that also comes the dilemma. How far should one go in preserving traditions that now seem tied to the economic lifeline of the region? As the community relies more heavily on tourism, the practice becomes intertwined with their survival. Families sometimes encourage their daughters to participate, knowing that it may bring not only blessings, but also financial benefits. But the deeper question remains: does economic necessity justify the continuation of something that feels outdated to outsiders? The impact of modernization cannot be ignored. As younger generations grow up in a world increasingly connected to the global economy, they face tough choices. Should they maintain the old ways, or step into a future shaped by modern values? It's impossible to ignore the growing divide in opinions about this tradition. On one side, there are those within the country who view it as an essential part of their heritage, something that cannot and should not be tampered with. On the other, there are voices, both local and international, calling for an end to what they see as a practice that exploits young women under the guise of cultural preservation. Critics argue that these young women are often too young or too powerless to make truly informed decisions, that the practice preys on their vulnerability, and that tourists, some knowing, others oblivious, are complicit in their exploitation. But the lines are not as clearly drawn as one might think. In a community where tradition holds as much weight as survival, how do we distinguish between preservation and exploitation? And should the outside world have a say in how this community governs itself, especially when it comes to something so deeply ingrained? Behind every tradition are the real lives it affects. These young women, often coming from humble backgrounds, have their own thoughts, dreams, and reasons for participating. Some see it as an honor, a way to uphold family values and bring blessings to their household. Others, however, view it as a path they didn't choose, a road they walk out of necessity rather than desire. Tourists, too, play a role in this narrative. Some come with full awareness of what they're getting into, drawn by the allure of the exotic and the forbidden. Others are swept into the practice without fully understanding its significance, and for many, the experience leaves them questioning everything they thought they knew about cultural exchange. The personal stories of both the young women and the tourists paint a complex picture, one that goes beyond simple right or wrong. It's a tale of people navigating the blurred lines between tradition and modernity, choice and obligation, desire and necessity. As the world continues to change, so too does this tradition. Young people are becoming increasingly exposed to global ideas and values. Education, mobility, and technology are all playing a role in reshaping how the younger generation views the customs of their ancestors. Many are beginning to question whether the practice should continue or evolve with the times, but the tradition isn't fading without a fight. There are still those who cling to it, who believe that letting it go would mean losing a vital part of their identity. For them, this is more than just a practice. It's a lifeline to their past, a way of staying connected to the world as it once was. But how long can this tradition withstand the forces of modernity? The future of this controversial practice hangs in the balance. Will it continue to be a part of the community's fabric, or will it be swept away by the tide of change? The younger generation is already forging their own paths, some choosing to leave the tradition behind, others finding ways to modernize it without losing its core meaning. But one thing is certain: whatever happens, this story is far from over. The future of this tradition will be decided not just by the community itself, but by the outside forces of globalization, tourism, and changing values. If you found this journey as fascinating and thought-provoking as we did, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue to explore the world's hidden stories, bringing them to light for you. So, what do you think? Should this tradition continue? Let us know in the comments below.